Hello all, Miss B here. Hopefully you are doing well and working on your puzzle one piece at a time. Just wanted to pop in today and talk to you all about death and just pose the question of, what happens after death. Now, we know what it says from a religious standpoint, from a Christian standpoint, from various standpoints, but I'll just give you a real life example that helps to kind of get your mind going, if you will. In 1997, I believe it was. Yeah, it was 1997. It was January 97, and I got a call. I was in Atlanta. Why is it so cold in here? Because it's cold outside. That's why. Got my heat going. Get my heat going. I got a call, and the call basically said it was one of my aunts, and she said my grandmother was ill and was en route to the hospital. And after some further talking, found out that my grandmother had accepted or agreed to ride in an ambulance to the hospital. And I was immediately concerned because my grandmother doesn't do, that's too loud. Let me get some heat going here. My grandmother doesn't do hospitals. I mean, just, she was just one of those people that, she would rather, eat anything negative, roaches, rats, snakes, you name it. She'd eat all of that before she voluntarily took a ride to the hospital. So the fact that she did let me know that she was either that far beaten down, or not beaten down, but just down, feeling kind of ready to give up, ready to just be done with life, if you will. And so that basically began the journey of her transitioning. I went on to work and I was actually on my way to work when I got the call. Went into work, took care of payroll, all that kind of stuff, and made sure the job was squared away. And then the subsequent call, maybe 2-3 hours later, said that it was, we'll wait it out a couple days, that the doctors run some tests, etc., and see before I made the trip. It was like a 12-13 hour drive. And I think the lowest I did that drive was 11 and a half hours. So, and I did that. And then I got the call back a couple days later that said, go ahead and get on the road and make the trip, because according to the doctors, that was their recommendation, that everyone start coming in and making preparations and stuff. So, now that I had been, during this time frame, I'd already identified that oftentimes when people I know are going through things, I would get stuff downloaded into me either by way of a vision. I mean, a very clear vision, like a little, I won't say a cartoon, but it's a motion picture that plays out in front of my head. I could be driving down the road and the motion picture just plays, in my head. I can see it, and it's like, oh, okay, alrighty. Or it might be through an actual dream, or it might just be thoughts that are like dropped into me or into my spirit. And so I knew kind of what to do. But for her, I think I was still in denial that we were getting to that point for her, because, this is the first person that was that close to me passing, and, she helped raise me. So I wasn't quite ready for that. I could do everybody else's. I can be prepared. I can do my mourning, my grieving, and then be prepared for, the closer family members to be a support to them. But, yeah, I was still in denial, I think. The Thanksgiving prior, I usually travel south for the holiday, and that Thanksgiving prior, I got in my car, loaded up, and it's like, okay, no, we're going north instead of south, and wound up going north, which turned out, my brother did the same thing. He doesn't usually go for Thanksgiving, and something just told him to go home for Thanksgiving. And so we both kind of showed up, and we were both like shocked, like, what are you doing here? Hey, how you doing? But it turned out that that was the last Thanksgiving we had with her. And we kind of knew it then when we saw her. We took a look, and he and I always had this way to kind of communicate with each other without speaking. Well, not always, but, often, I would say. If we were in tune with each other, we could communicate without speaking. And we both looked at each other at one moment. I remember sitting in our living room, and we looked, and we just knew each other's thoughts exactly. We talked about it later, and yeah, kind of confirmed that she was getting close. But I was still in denial. So anyway, January has rolled around, and she's there, and I get the call. And just a side note here, when you guys get a call like that, get someone else to drive you, or wait it out if you can, because I'll tell you, I kid you not, I started out in Atlanta. I remember getting in the car. I remember driving out and turning onto the main road. And the next thing I remember were blue lights chasing. I mean, he was booking, trying to catch me. In Charlotte, North Carolina. I don't remember anything else. Literally, that's just where my mind was. All I knew was, got to get to New York, and I was in that left-hammer lane, and anything that was in front of me, I was flashing lights, flashing flashes, and move out the way. I got to go. Which was very dangerous, but, I had favor because I was able to, I was honest with him, etc. And I think the fact that I slowed down when I saw him way back there in the rearview mirror, blue lights trying to catch me, and I went ahead and dropped my speed, so I didn't come across as someone who was trying to be evasive. I went and dropped my speed and let him catch me and pull me over, and was honest, told him where I was going, why I was going. And, I was supposed to go to jail. According to the law, I was supposed to go to jail with the speed I was doing. Do 95 in the 60 zone, and, get to go home that day. But under the circumstances, and he did call. He asked for the number, and he called, and once he was able to verify what I was saying was true, he just gave me a little tongue lashing about slowing down because of safety, obviously, and, get there as soon as I could, and he wished us well. So that was a little side piece there, a little side note there. And keep that in mind. If you get calls of that nature, if you can get someone to drive you, if you're able to fly, and in hindsight, I should have just jumped on a plane. But that was my routine, get in the car, go up for the weekend or whatever, and come back. So that's just what I did. I jumped in the car. Because I didn't need a car when I got to New York. I was going to the hospital and camping out at the hospital, so there was no need for a car to drive around. I could have jumped on a plane, took a taxi to the airport, and been done. So she's at the hospital. I'm there, and she had slipped into a coma, and she was in that for a while. And when she finally came out, actually went back and forth from January till, to when she finally passed in April. It was back and forth every weekend. But she had slipped into a coma, and she came out the weekend of Valentine's Day that year. That she was out, and in that particular weekend, I flew. I had booked a flight, and I was kind of getting tired, and the drive was getting to be a little bit, so I booked a flight, and I flew up. So that was great because I had more time with her. I was able to fly out as soon as I got off work, and then spend all the time and catch the last flight out Sunday night. And so we were able to talk. Grandmother to granddaughter, woman to woman, older woman to younger woman, human to human, and just have those conversations and stuff that different things ask. And I did ask her some of the things that were always on my mind that I had not asked. I asked, and she was I think honest with me, which made a big difference for me, because there were some things that did bother me. But she's grandmama, and you don't question grandmama, because grandmama is she get that stick at you quick. But when she came out of the coma, I remember my uncle, her youngest son, asking her, Mama, we're glad to see you come back. We're glad to see you back with us. We thought you were gone. And she looked, I remember she was eating her ice, and she looked up and she said, no, I went down. Well, how did she put it? Let me get it right. No, I didn't like it down there, so I came back. And he and I kind of looked at each other like, hmm. And so I thought about that. I didn't like it down there, so I came back. So immediately I'm thinking, well, she's going to hell, because all I knew was heaven or hell. And so I toyed with that for a while, and what it did was it opened the whole floodgates of life after life here on earth. And I didn't think to ask her, what does that mean? What did you see? Where were you? I didn't think of any of that. I just heard that and I immediately just assumed. So there's a time when I didn't communicate properly. Because had I asked the right questions, some subsequent questions, I might have gotten more definitive answers. But time carried on, and I continued to go back and forth. She slipped back into a coma, and I didn't speak with her again. In April, the last of April, I was just tired from back and forth. But I think maybe a week before, I had two dreams. One dream, she lived in the project, so I was coming around the corner from the candy store, going into her building like we used to do all the time, going to the store. And when I rounded that corner, I saw, I think it was 4 limousines lined up in front of her building. And her sister, she was one of 13. And her sisters were there. And I remember seeing one of my aunts get out of the limousine and I was going inside, and she was coming inside too. So I knew they were there for us, for our family. That was one dream. A couple days later, and I'm still kind of worried about where she's going to go in the afterlife. A couple days later, I dreamt that I was at her house in New York, or her apartment. She lived in the projects, and it was a 3-bedroom apartment. You had a long hallway, and at the end of the hallway, you had the girls' room, you had the boys' room, and then you had her room. And I dreamt I was in the girls' room, laying asleep on one of the twin beds, with my head at the foot of the bed, so I couldn't see the door. My head was actually facing the window, the opposite direction. But then in the dream, I was asleep. So it was like a dream within a dream. And I was asleep in the bed. My eyes were closed, but I could feel the heat. I felt just a strong heat. And then I realized it was a light, and it was bright. And in my sleep, or my double sleep, I guess you could say, the light was getting stronger. The heat was getting hotter, not hotter, more warmer. But the light was getting stronger. And I finally had enough courage to lift my head and look toward the door. And I lift my head, looked toward the door, and the door was closed. But I could see now there's no lamp or anything in the room. So the room was pitch dark while I was asleep, except for this light that's coming, and I could see the closeness of the light coming. Like, as the light is coming down the hall, it's getting brighter and brighter and brighter. And I looked toward the door, and I could just see all the bright coming up from underneath the door. The door was closed, but all the bright was coming up from underneath it, and it just had the whole room lit up. And then the door opened, and it was some sort of angelic being. It was something. It wasn't human. And I could make out a silhouette. I could make out what looked like wings on the back, as if it was an angel type of thing. And that's all. I couldn't make out a face. It was too bright. And this wasn't like, it was bright like the sun, but it wasn't yellow like the sun. It was a white light. It was very white, like lily white, pure white, whiter than cotton white. And like I said, I couldn't see the face because it was just too bright to look at, to be able to stare at and see the face. But I saw all the brightness around it. I saw the brightness just all the way around. And I was just in awe. And it says to me, I know you're worried about her, but don't worry, she'll be okay. And I'm just kind of puzzled for a second. And then for whatever reason, I had the notion, and I had not been trained in how to do this, but I had enough sense to ask, well, God, if that's you, then give me a sign. And so in that instant, when I said that, the whole thing, this whole being uh, closed up or shrunk down into a dove, a white dove. And it was in front of me, so it shrunk down to this white dove and flew right past me, right past my head, and went out the window that was back of me. Like right now, you see it looks pitch black back there. That's what it would. It actually looked darker than that, because I think I see some lights back there in the distance. She was up high, not up high, but she was on the 3rd floor, and it was pitch black out there. And so I watched this dove fly out into the darkness until I couldn't see it anymore. And I kind of toyed with that. I didn't tell anybody about it, but I kept it to myself. A couple weeks later, I was just exhausted and I just couldn't make the trip. I had not booked a flight in time, and the flights were, just they were. I couldn't afford the flight. $1,000, I think it was like 1,100, something like that, for less than 7 days, and so that was out of the budget. And I was just too tired to even make it like halfway to get to my uncle in North Carolina and let him drive the rest of the way. I was just exhausted. So I didn't go that weekend. And as it turned out, that's the weekend that she transitioned. And I kicked myself for a while. I was like, if I should have been there, I should have been there. If I'd been there, she wouldn't have went. And I found out that nobody else was there with her either. And I think people were just tired. And then the more I thought about it, it's like, okay, well, that's the only time she could go, because we were trying to get ready to let her go, but we had not been ready to let her go. So she had to go at a moment when none of us were around so she could just go on. But we transport her. We're from the country in Alabama, so she's transported back down to Alabama, and we have the funeral there. And afterwards, we're sitting in another uncle's yard, and they're like talking about the different florals and stuff and divvying them up. And I had not planned to get a floral. I'm still kind of digesting what all had occurred and the fact that she's really gone and stuff like that and whatever. And they called out, it just so happened one of the florals, I looked and I saw it had a dove in it, a white dove. And I just looked and I said, that's my dream. And in that moment, I knew that she was okay. I don't know where she is. I'm not going to say where she is. Won't try to say where she is. But in that moment, I knew that she was okay. And I just had the best, I guess if you can use the term, the best calmness about her passing than I'd had the whole time. And even since then, I've, been a little upset. I've cried. It's been difficult going back home, back to New York, just because that was always my second stop. My first stop was to my mother's house. The second stop would be to her house. And it's like, how do you go back home and not go to grandma's house? So I kind of cut back on going to New York simply for that reason. But I always felt like she was okay. So I see this plant, this floral. It's a white lily, not white lily, a peace lily with the white dove sitting in it. And so they're calling out who gave the different florals. And then when they pulled up the card, that was the card that was sent from my job. That was the floral that was sent from my job. So I'm like, wow, isn't that something? And my job sent the floral that happened to have the white dove in it. So I immediately said, okay, I want that one. I don't want nothing else. None of the property, nothing else. Just I want this floral. And and then that was granted to me. I got the floral and I maintained it for years and years and years until I had to move and gave it to someone else for safekeeping with the intent to go back and get it. And they didn't, I guess, have the same sentiments for it as I did, and so it wasn't obtainable when I went back. But I don't think she had an issue with that. I think she's okay with it. So I bring all of this up to say, We don't know for sure where people are going when they leave here, because they don't come back and tell us. That's the one person that I know I can say for sure came back and gave us some sort of indication as to life after death. And I will say, like I said, I didn't talk to anybody after having that dream, but I did ask one minister to make sure that she was led in the prayers of salvation, and just to make sure her soul and her spirit would be okay when the time came. And I didn't give them any details, but I just told them that. And so I don't know what was done because I wasn't present. Actually, I was in Atlanta at the time, and I knew this person was on their way traveling to see her. And so I called them and asked them to do that for me. So I just wanted to put that out there for us. Our spirits, our souls, they go somewhere. I won't venture to say where it is because I've not been there and I don't know for sure, but I know they go somewhere. We don't just die and stop existing at that point. I do know wherever it was she was going or where she went initially wasn't for her. And she said that. She said, I went, I didn't like it, and I came back. So she came back for whatever reason. I think, well, I have some ideas. There were a couple people she didn't see. A couple of her kids hadn't made it. And so I think she was waiting to make sure she had last conversations with them, as well as she had some foster kids. So make sure we had a plan in place to take her foster kids and continue to raise them so that they wouldn't go into the system and get lost and stuff like that. So once she was able to see the people that she wanted to see, she was able to be comfortable that we had a plan in place for the foster kids. And I do believe the whatever that minister said to her or whatever was beneficial, because she just went ahead and left when no one was around. So again, I say that to say we go somewhere when we leave here. And so the videos I'm putting up to you guys, constantly talking about getting your healing, putting your puzzle pieces into your puzzle. It's so that we can get as much healing, as much resolution, so when our time comes, hopefully we can be at a point where we don't have to have that experience of going somewhere that we don't like. Hopefully we'll have an experience that our spirits, our souls, the meat of who we are goes somewhere that we would be happy with, that we would enjoy. And so just think about it. And for the ones who want to, the Christians, or she's going to heaven, or she's going to hell, or you're going here. And again, that's not the objective of this. It's to let those people know, or let everybody know. Resolve your issues, resolve your conflicts. You don't know when your time is coming. First of all, it could be in a car wreck tomorrow. Could be in a bus wreck. Who knows? You could be in a drive-by. Who knows when your time is? You might go in your sleep. Or we just don't know what's going on in the world. We don't know what's going on in the world today, and you want to be ready. You want to resolve as much conflict as you can, because it would be sad that you go and your spirit goes somewhere because, let's say, for example, I don't know this because I ain't been there. You've got so much negativity, so much baggage that, where the good place, whatever that good place is, won't accept you because you got too much baggage and you can't afford the extra baggage fee. Like you go to the airplane, you try to get on a plane, and you got all this extra baggage. Either you pay for it, they tell you got to get rid of some of your baggage before you can get off the plane. Same scenario. Get rid of some of the baggage. Resolve some of your conflicts. Call who you need to call. Apologize to who you need to apologize to. Meet with who you need to meet with. Stuff that you've taken from people, give it back. Stuff people have taken from you, it'd be great if you got it back, but if you can't, try to do without it. Try to get to a point, if you can, But resolve as many relationships as you can. Your sibling that you're not speaking to for the last 2 years because, I don't know, they stole your car and wrecked it, or they were on drugs and they stole a lot of money from you. Whatever the situation, try to resolve it. And that's not just for, in the situation of a sibling and the other one that was on drugs, that's not just for the one who was off the drugs. That's more so specifically for the one who was on the drugs. Make amends, atone for your stuff, own your stuff, get rid of it, have the resolution with the person that you offended. So when your time comes, you don't have all the extra baggage, and that releases them so they don't have all that extra baggage. That being the case, let me know what you think. Like and subscribe, share if you want. And you don't have to like, or you don't share. You don't. It just is. But I'm doing my duty and I'm putting the information out there, and so hopefully it will be a blessing to somebody. And with that, you guys have a great night.